you think a 20-year-old has a better time at Disney World than a 60-year-old? Today on Walt Disney World Adults Only, we'll explore how people in different decades enjoy Walt Disney World. Welcome, Your Royal Highnesses. I'm Carol from Walt Disney World Adults Only. I thought it might be fun to see how people of different ages enjoy their Disney trips. Do all age groups go from rope drop to park close? Do they all spend at least one day drinking around the world at Epcot? Do they plan more resort days? Of course, it all depends on how many times they've visited Disney in the past. And obviously there are personal preferences involved. But I wondered if people's trips changed over the years. Today we'll hear from people who are in different decades of life, starting with the 20s. We'll hear from Leanne, Eric, Dan, Helen, and myself. We'll start with our youngest presenter. Leanne is somewhere in her 20s. Leanne, how does a 20-something approach a trip to Disney World?
Thanks, Carol. My first trip was back in 2001. We stayed in All Star Movies in the Dalmatian section. There was no art of animation at that time, so this was as much Disney in your face as humanly possible. My big things on my lists was always autograph books. Trying to fill it was like my main aim. Meeting as many characters as possible was always right up there. Getting my autographs, getting my picture with my big cheesy grin. One of the other things that I loved to do back in the earlier days was pin trading. Although I say pin trading, it was more buying pins and keeping them. I think I only ever traded one pin, and the fact that I had to lose a pin that I'd bought really crawled me. I did not like it. It was really upsetting. So now I just kind of buy the lanyards and collect pins. Now my ideal Disney trip is still getting in as many rides as humanly possible. Let's not get that wrong. But, and some people might not like this, I may or may not avoid characters. I don't avoid them to say, because I love character dining and character dining experiences, but I don't really want to stand in a queue waiting to meet a character. I would rather be stood in a queue for Tower of Terror, or in a queue at Food and Wine Festival getting myself a nice cocktail. My last trip that I managed to make pre-COVID was 2019, and that is where I started my drinking around the world and generally drinking in Disney. I also still love to get on as many rides as possible. Big adrenaline type roller coasters, and then head over for a cocktail or a snack. Another thing that I really learned to appreciate as I got into my 20-somethings is Epcot. I very quickly realised as I got into my 20s that Epcot was by far the most enjoyable park as you got older. There is so much to do, so much to take in, and it is more than just a theme park. They always say you slow down the older you get when you get to Disney. I'm still waiting to slow down. I've not slowed down yet. I wonder if that's just a myth. Carol, can you remember that far back to your 20s Disney trips?
I remember every trip, but those farther back are a little vague. Now, Eric is somewhere in his 30s. Eric, what's your favorite way to spend time at Disney World?
Well, Carol, my very first trip to Walt Disney World wasn't until I was 30 years old. I had never gotten to go as a child. My family never really went on vacations or trips when I was growing up. And when I was with my boyfriend, who is now my husband, he found out that I had never been to Disney World, and he knew that that had to change. He's a big Disney parks fan, so he wanted to take me and experience me going to the park for the first time. So we went back in 2015, and that was my first experience, and needless to say, I fell in love and I was hooked immediately. We went back later that year during Christmas time for my second visit, and since then we've been about 6 other times. I'm usually on the go from rope drop until the park closes. We always say, oh, on this trip, we're gonna take it easy, we're not gonna plan too much, and we're just kind of go with the flow, but that never happens. We always get there at rope drop, we're always there right at the beginning of the day. If it's terribly hot, when we've been in the hotter months, we may take a break and go back to the resort in the middle of the day to rest and cool off a little bit. And then we'll usually go back out, park hop somewhere else in the evening, and then we'll stay till close then as well. When I'm at Disney, as I said, it's mostly go, go, go for me. I like to get on a lot of rides and attractions. To me, it's almost like maximizing your time, seeing how many things, how many attractions, how many shows you can ride, do, get on before the end of the day. I have found, unfortunately, on the last couple of trips that we've taken to Disney, that the older that I'm getting, I'm not able to hang as well as I was when I was younger on some of the rides. And of course, this isn't just for Disney, this is just rides in general. But it is a little worrisome that I'm already starting to feel the effects of that old age hitting me on some of these rides that I really love. Rides like Star Tours and Flight of Passage, those motion simulator rides. Sometimes they can get me a little bit dizzy or feeling a little bit queasy, whereas in my younger days, never had any problems. Now, I am getting closer to 40, so on the horizon in the next decade of my life, of course, we'll still continue to go to Disney World. I will still hopefully be able to ride everything that I love riding, getting on everything that I love getting on. Hopefully, I don't experience vertigo or motion sickness or anything like that that stops me from enjoying all of the rides and attractions that I love across Disney World. Carol, at your age, do you even ride rides anymore?
Very funny, Eric. Yes, at my age, I ride Kilimanjaro safaris over and over and over. Now, Dan is a little closer to my decade. He's in his 40s. Dan, have you slowed down at all from your first Disney trips?
Thanks, Carol. I have changed a few things, but on the whole, I'm still about maximising my time when I'm at Walt Disney World. So I take more breaks now, I make better use of technology and services offered by Disney, and the older I get, the less likely I am to wait in a queue. I was a teenager the first time that I visited way back in 1994 with my parents and my younger brother, and we stayed off-site on International Drive. Both my brother and I were in our absolute element at being taken to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. There was no internet. Well, there was, but it was kind of dial-up and really slow and not much information out there. But we had a VHS video cassette and a book to help us plan. In Florida, we travelled to and from the theme parks with my dad driving. I remember that we used to have a really big breakfast off-site, some kind of buffet place, Ponderosa or something, and then we'd have a snack or a lunch in the park, and then we'd go back to a local restaurant off-site in the evening for an evening meal. Now, my parents weren't poor, but they weren't rich either, and to try and dine at Disney restaurants was probably a little bit outside of their budget back then. I remember that we queued for absolutely everything, long wait, standing in the heat, and we didn't visit any of the Disney resorts during this trip at all. We did, however, go to Universal Studios, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens and Wet n Wild before we headed down to St. Petersburg, Clearwater and to the Florida Everglades. I next visited in my early 20s and again stayed off-site, this time in Kissimmee. During this trip we mainly ate off-site, and I remember visiting one of the Disney hotels for the first time. It was for a DBC sales talk and we got some kind of incentive for going. I don't even remember which Disney resort it was. All I remember was as we came away thinking to myself that I need to stay at a Walt Disney World Resort hotel on my next trip. On this trip, I remember that I also discovered my love for the Walt Disney World water parks. They were just incredible. And at this point, I really did start to favour Disney over Universal and SeaWorld too. Well, in my 30s, I did stay on site. I stayed club level in a suite at Disney's Wilderness Lodge. Check me out. I discovered Fast Pass, which revolutionised how I now plan my time in the park. And being on site also gave me the opportunity to take breaks when the parks got really busy. It was so easy to be able to jump on that little boat or on a bus back to Wilderness Lodge and have a little bit of downtime and relax. And that has totally paved the way that I now do my Disney trips. I rope drop a park, I stay until it gets really busy, I go back to my resort, have some chill out time, and then go back to a park for the evening. Also on this trip, I discovered Disney Transportation and Disney's Magical Express. These were a game changer for me. I no longer had to drive. And on this trip, I had a Disney dining plan for the first time, and this was a real game changer. I got to eat in some amazing Disney restaurants for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Wow. And this is where my love of California Grill was born. During this trip, I visited so many Walt Disney World resorts, and my love of the whole resort just blossomed. So now I'm in my 40s, early 40s, thank you Carol, and I have a far less intense experience. I make use of planning, of my Disney experience and of dining reservations, and I take breaks during the day. My experience at Walt Disney World is now far more relaxed. I use FastPass to experience rides, and I do not wait in line for more than 30 minutes. And when Genie Plus is launched, I will be making the best use of that as well. So it has been an education, my pace has slowed, and I now enjoy things more. I make best use of the technology available, and I love staying on site at Disney resorts and eating in all the Disney restaurants. Now the dining plan, we typically get it free with our packages in the UK, but if I didn't get it free, I probably wouldn't pay for it now. I like the idea of having more flexibility, being able to have an appetizer instead of a dessert, and also not stressing about getting the maximum value out of each credit. There is only so much lobster that one can eat in a week. But I think my dining might change, and tours are really high on my list. Paid extras, things that I've never done before. And if my most recent trip was cancelled due to COVID, I was going to be renting DVC points. That's something that I would like to continue to explore as well in the future. I think 40s is the perfect age to go to Disney, Carol. When we have our Walt Disney World Adults Only group trip, will you be able to keep up?
I'll keep up with you, Dan, as long as I don't have to go on mission space. And maybe I'll make you wear ears. Helen, these youngsters think they have the market cornered on how to adult Disney. Can you tell them how mature adults in their 50s do it?
Thanks, Carol. My first trip was in 1996 with my parents and my daughter. My parents had visited Walt Disney World on many occasions and wanted us to experience the magic as well. We stayed off site in a villa with my dad driving us to and from the parks each day. The thought of staying on site had never even crossed our minds. As well as visiting Disney, we also visited Universal, Busch Gardens, Downtown Disney as it was back then, and I remember a great day out at Daytona Beach. Our days at Disney started early, but not rope drop, as I didn't even know this was a thing back then. And we'd leave before the fireworks. I know, what were we thinking? I can't remember a lot more about this trip, other than I know that this is really when my Disney obsession began. We've had several more trips over the years as my family have grown up, and our ride choices and experiences have completely changed. We had a special trip to Walt Disney World in June 2019 to celebrate my 50th birthday. I went with my adult children, my parents, and it was my partner's first visit. Staying on property wasn't an option for us this time again, and we stayed off site in a villa. This trip was definitely different to our first family trip together, with the help of the My Disney Experience app. Having our fast passes already chosen instead of having to race across the park for the next paper fast pass definitely made the trip more structured, and we were able to fit much more in. This was the first time that we'd had Memory Maker too, and we definitely took advantage of it. We tried lots more quick service locations this time and ate many more snacks, but unfortunately we didn't get around to do a character dining experience or try any table service restaurants. Returning to Disney with my partner in January 2020, and after doing a lot more research, I definitely appreciated Disney more as an adult. Now being in my 50s, I find that I've got more time to explore the resorts, have a character dining experience, eat at more table service restaurants, and do behind the scenes tours. And we even stayed at a resort this time. All things that I never experienced when I was younger. So yes, visiting Disney in my 50s is great. And I can't wait to return next year to explore more resorts and eat lots more restaurants. I guess that leaves how a 60-something spends her days and nights at Walt Disney World.
Thanks, Helen. Disney is just as much fun in the 60s as in the earlier decades, maybe even more so. I started going to Disney in 1972 when there was only one park, Magic Kingdom. I was in my teens and we were vacationing on Daytona Beach, but there was a tour bus that went to Disney. My mother put me on the tour bus and sent me on my way. So my first trip to Disney World was actually solo. There was only one park to navigate, but seeing that castle for the first time was absolutely thrilling. I rode all the e-ticket rides first, and then as many of the other rides as I could before the bus took us back to Daytona Beach. I returned several times between 76 and 80, but those were college spring break trips, and it was a totally different experience those times. The magic of seeing the castle was still there. I've returned every time a new park opened, which meant longer trips and more planning involved. I was a teacher in New York State, so all my trips had to go during school vacations, when they were always crowded and always a lot of kids. But I always traveled adults only. Because of the crowds, we always rope dropped and mostly stayed till park closing, unless it was really hot and then we might hop back to the resort for a swim. Teachers don't make a lot of money, so we could only go once every 3 years or so and stayed at value resorts. In my 50s, quick service dining turned to more table service dining with a few signature restaurants thrown in. So I guess you could say I slowed down a little, but we still rope dropped and stayed to park closed a lot of the time. Now in my 60s, I'm not limited by school vacations. I can go whenever I want. Money is less of an issue, so we're able to stay longer and enjoy more signature dining experiences. I'm also looking forward to my first stay at Animal Kingdom Lodge, and will take my first ever resort day there. Although I might pop into one of the parks to see a fireworks in the evening. I still enjoy rope drop and all the rides, and if you're subscribed to our channel, and if you're not, please do so. You already know Kilimanjaro safaris are my favorite. At my age, we have more financial freedom, so we're able to experience more backstage tours, which is always a ton of fun. I purchased my first annual pass for the 3 trips I have planned in the next year. So I have to say, Disney in your 60s is fantastic. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. Please tell us in the comments below how you would experience a trip in your current decade.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends.
Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you know when all our videos land.
If you're not already a part of our Walt Disney World Adults Only Facebook group, be sure to join us there, where we will continue this discussion along with many, many more.
The link is in the description down below.
And remember, never grow up.